Because suppose planets were actually very rare. Suppose the solar system was sitting here and then you had to go 1,000 light years to the next planetary system. That would be difficult for us if we wanted to study those planets because they're a long way away. I'm doing the politician thing of kind of circling around the question here. So it definitely, the abundance of planets improves the odds of us obtaining an answer, which is huge. Right? Don't underestimate that. What does it mean for the actual probability of there being other life out there and how often it occurs? If I'm completely honest with you, we don't know.
An international team of researchers thus decided to look at poverty as a possible driver of non-communicable illness. They pored over data from 48 previously published studies that included socioeconomic information. Together, those studies included some 1.75 million subjects from 7 high-income countries in the WHO, and the research team found that being poor was more dangerous than obesity or high alcohol intake. The study is in the journal The Lancet. And how many people in America and or worldwide? What's a best guess estimate?
Yeah, the best guess is that there's about 1 million people in the United States with Parkinson's and probably about 4 to 5 million worldwide. The greatest risk factor for getting Parkinson's is being 60 years of age. So I think it's also important to shine a light on these age-related neurological diseases because we do have an aging population, and now is the time to really invest in the research to try to get out in front of that challenge and develop new treatments, particularly transformative therapies.
The amount of change in flowering time that we see with diversity loss is in the same magnitude range as the amount of change in flowering time we see with rising temperatures.
Wolf and her colleagues studied that effect in a grassland in Northern California, in study plots with 2 to 16 species of plants. And they found that for every 2 species lost, the remaining flowers blossomed a day earlier on average, possibly because the less diverse plots had higher soil temperatures, more moisture, and more nitrogen, all variables that could tweak the bloom time. The study's in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences.
What we do with this technique is use radio telescopes to observe pulsars, which are neutron stars that are rotating very rapidly and sending their beams of emission across Earth about several hundred times per second. And the idea is, of course, that if a gravitational wave is passing through Earth, the gravitational wave is stretching and squeezing our space-time, and the tick that we see from these very, very regularly spinning pulsars is speeding up and slowing down. Just like we can scale the stellar mass black holes that LIGO can detect to very, very intermediate mass, very large black holes that LISA can detect, pulsar timing arrays will probe the very massive end of this distribution and the most massive, so the billion to even 10 billion solar mass binary black holes in the universe. So every time you get a galaxy merger, you can get a binary supermassive black hole, which then will contribute signal to our pulsar timing arrays by propagating through the galaxy.
I had a case, this was before the National Academy report, but it's sort of illustrative of what I'm talking about, United States versus Glynn. In that case, the government put on a tool-mark expert to testify that the markings on the shell that had been found at the scene of the crime matched the markings inside the barrel of the gun that had been found under the defendant's bed. And I asked him, for example, what's your error rate? And what's the error rate of this methodology that you're using? And he said 0. And I said, 0? And he said, yes. And I said, how can it be 0? And he said, well, in every case I've testified, the guy's been convicted.
For example, when young endangered African penguins head out to sea, they look for areas with low surface temperatures and high chlorophyll, because those conditions signal the presence of phytoplankton. And lots of phytoplankton means lots of zooplankton, which in turn means lots of their favorite fish. Well, that's what it used to mean. Climate change plus overfishing have made the penguin feeding grounds a mirage. The habitat is indeed plankton-rich, but now it's fish-poor. Researchers call this kind of scenario an ecological trap.
I was really hoping we'd see them going east and finding the areas where the fish have shifted to. So I was quite surprised to be wrong, and unfortunately quite sad to be wrong in this case, because it ends up being quite a sad story for the penguins.
The researchers calculate that by falling into this ecological trap, African penguin populations on South Africa's Western Cape have declined by around 80%. The findings are in the journal Current Biology. Some research groups are exploring the idea of translocating chicks to a place where they can't get trapped, like the Eastern Cape. But Shirley thinks that a longer-term solution means implementing regulations to create more sustainable fisheries, something that he says has public support.
It's a situation where you have a signal that previously pointed an animal towards good quality habitat. That habitat's been changed usually by rapidly induced human pressure, so usually anthropogenic change. And the signal stays, but the underlying quality and environment deteriorates.
University of Exeter zoologist Richard Shirley. He and his team used satellite imaging to track the dispersal of 54 recently fledged African penguins from 8 sites along southern Africa. Historically, the birds benefited from tons of fish along the coasts of Angola, Namibia, and western South Africa, but now they're going hungry.
Scientists investigated those pathways in humans and mice. They found that exposure to low oxygen depletes stores of a red blood cell protein. It's called EENT1. And that's a good thing, because now other substances that protect your body against low oxygen are free to rapidly accumulate and help the body adapt. But here's the kicker. Once the EENT1 protein goes away, it doesn't come back, meaning red blood cells kind of remember their altitude exposure. And that means if you hit the mountains again soon enough, you can acclimate faster than you did the first time. The findings are in the journal Nature Communications.